Do you feel safe at work? We throw this concept around of building a safe environment, having an open door policy, but that needs to be more than just a catchphrase and it needs to be a way of life. If you're looking to build a healthy and high performing culture, building psychological safety is key. And that is what we are talking about today: how you can build a safe environment and how that impacts and has a ripple effect on your retention and on your bottom line. I'm Clara Capano, and this is Clarity in Action. Welcome to Clarity in Action. This is the show where we have real conversations that are going to challenge your perspectives and drive real action. So if you are tired of holding back and you're ready to make bold moves, this is the show for you. Join us as we are going to take you from confusion into clarity. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Clarity in Action, and this is going to be a fun one. We actually have two guests with us today, so we are going to get so much information and so much value. I want to introduce, first off, we have Chief People Officer. We have Lori Spencer here, and then we have her cohort, Eric Spencer, who is also the COO of Sky Team, and we are going to be talking about the importance of psychological safety in the workplace and how that has a ripple effect. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you both here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You know, I hear this, and I'm sure you do too. We hear this all the time. Oh, I want to create a safe environment. You know, my door is always open. But when we pull back the curtain, it really isn't. You know, I think that those words have become something that people throw around. But Lori, let's start with you. Talk to me about this concept of psychological safety in the workplace and, you know, what it really is, the myth behind it, and why it's so important to really have that.
Sure. So the term always kind of threw me off a little. Like, what? I'm not really sure what they're getting at when they say psychological safety. But I think what I've come to understand is just this idea of leaders setting the example and demonstrating that it's okay for people to make mistakes. It's okay for people to bring up difficult conversations. And it's more than okay, it's actually encouraged, because the more we feel confident and comfortable speaking our truths at work and generally in life, right?
Yeah.
The more and having positive outcomes when we do that, right? I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get anybody else in trouble. I'm not labeled now as a troublemaker, or right, that I actually have positive outcomes where that was appreciated, that was welcomed, and it actually helped. That creates a entirely different experience of being at work. It creates a very different culture in the workplace. And so when we have that sense of being safe at work, we're way more likely to stay engaged. We're way more likely to stay there and not drift away, and to feel like we're contributing and we're doing something meaningful, while being true, you know, while being authentic in ourselves. So I think it's actually a really core way of being at work that makes a huge difference.
It truly is. And that reminds me, I work with a leadership team, and we had a group meeting and we were getting into it. And after the meeting, the owner of the company called me and he's like, "Oh, you know, I'm really sorry about that." I was like, "What are you sorry for?" I was like, "That was one of the best meetings we've had," because everybody was sharing. I said, we all have the common goal, which is to get us to success, get us to greatness. And if we cannot be honest with each other, you know, it's not like anybody was trying to tear the others down. So, you know, Eric, I want to go over to you and get your thoughts on this. You know, especially you brought up something in a conversation we had off camera, that we have seen a shift in this because so many of us have gone to a hybrid working environment. And how can we maintain that, you know, when we're doing it over the virtual screen?
Yeah, it's hard, right? I mean, we have lost the upside of serendipity. We used to run into each other in the hallway, go to lunch together, right? Go to your happy hour, have dinners and whatnot. And we would have these serendipitous moments where we would learn about each other. We would learn about our backstories, about who we care about what we're into outside of work, and things that just were natural springboards to deepening relationships. And at SkyTeam, we believe that relationships are core to building psychological safety because you have to know, trust, and like the people that you work with. In a hybrid environment, you have to do it with so much more intentionality.
Yeah.
Right? You have to do things on purpose. Doing meetings in this frame, Zoom, Teams, Gmeet, whatever your platform, they're pretty good. I mean, video quality is good, audio sounds good. It's not like, conference calls of old, but you have to intentionally set out to do them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to randomly bump into somebody on Zoom. So we tend to be pretty task focused in our workflows online. So you can be in back-to-back meetings all day long, and it can just be bang, 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 task, task, task. We had a client who I was having this conversation with, the COO, and as a technology client, they're a very engineering culture. So, very sort of heads down, introverts. You walk into their office, and if people are there, they all have headphones on, their heads are down, and they're just typing away, right? So I was having this conversation with the COO, and I said, Mark, we have to be really intentional about building context and getting to know each other. And he said, so basically what you're telling me is I have to have 3 minutes of banter at the top of my meeting. And I said, well, yeah, kind of. And so it was really funny because his next staff meeting, he put it on the agenda, 3 minutes of banter, and it spread like wildfire through the company. So now most people include Mark's 3 minutes of banter
Mm-hmm.
on their agendas, where they just talk about what's going on in their lives. And it's still a little contrived, it's still a little weird because it's here and not in real space, but it works.
Totally does. It's that idea of we've got to be more relational and less transactional. And it's so easy because we're busy. We've got the next meeting stacked up. And as you mentioned, being intentional. So I would love to go into with both of you a little bit of the how. Lori, you brought up the idea that we have to model it. We can't just say it, we have to model it. Eric, you're talking about being intentional. And I hear all of that and I get it. But how do we do that? Like, how do we model it so that people are feeling safe? Because we make that one misstep and it shuts them down. You mentioned the 3 minutes of banter. What are other things we can do during the other 57 minutes of the meeting to be intentional? So Lori, let's go over to you first.
Sure. So when I think about, a lot of this load lands on the leaders, right? To set that stage and to set that example. And leaders have bad days too, right? And we talk about this idea of, you bring the weather especially when you're reaching the executive level, or especially if you're the, the CEO or the decision maker in the organization, you bring the weather when you walk in the door. And so your nonverbal communication, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, let alone what you're actually saying, right? The words you're saying, they don't even remember the words you're saying. They're feeling how you're feeling. And so that's a heavy lift for leaders. And I've talked to our CEO of our organization, and he has a ritual where he sits in his car when the days that he comes into the office, he sits in his car and he takes like 5 minutes to get his head right? To say, okay, I'm stressed out because this thing happened and I got this going on personally. And, where am I? How am I feeling? And not in an authentic way, not in a fake way, but how do I want to show up? How am I going to walk in the door today? Because that kind of instantly makes that impression, and people pick up on that and they see some level of consistency in that, right? And the same can be true on Zoom, right? You got to take a minute and make sure that you're not multitasking and not paying attention to what's going on, because people figure that out real quick when you're, off here doing things and somebody's trying to interact with you. So I think there's that intentionality of how do I want to show up today? Not to be fake, but just how do I want to lead today? And, just start there. That little bit of self-awareness precedes a lot of choice, right?
Really
Once you have that self-awareness, you can decide and make choices about how you're going to interact the rest of the time to set that kind of example.
Yeah. This reminds me, I was working for a company and they, and I think this leads into the intentionality too, and just kind of watching how you're showing up. I received a phone call to, from the owner to kind of go over something. And I said, oh, I'm just stepping into a meeting. And they said, oh, well, call me back when you're done. And I was like, well, why don't you tell me what's going on? And they said, well, it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a conversation. I said, well, I already know I'm in trouble for something. So why don't you just tell me what I'm in trouble for right now? And he said, why would you say that? And I said, because the only time you reach out to me is when I'm in trouble.
Uh-huh.
And his response was, well, I don't want that to be the case. And I'm like, then what are you going to do to change it?
Right.
So I think that this ties into what both of you are saying. So Eric, let's go over to you, not only with the showing up, but that intentionality. How can leaders do better at bringing in that intentionality so that when they hear the footsteps down the hall or they see that name calling on their phone, they're not like, oh, it's going to be a bad one. Clarity in Action is proudly sponsored by Telehealth for Her, where women's health finally gets the attention it deserves. At Telehealth for Her, they offer professional, comprehensive medical care designed to optimize your hormones, restore your gut health, and boost your energy. Because let's get real. Who doesn't need more energy? Your body is the foundation of everything you build. So let's make sure we are fine-tuning it for optimal performance. So if you've been out there crushing it in life, but still feeling a little bit off with some of that brain fog, hormone changes, sleepless nights, or emotions that are all over the place, I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. Telehealth for Her helps ambitious women just like you take back control and feel like yourself again so that you can keep leading with purpose and power. Check them out at mariahprinceallen.com or Telehealth for Her and start your journey back to a vibrant, unstoppable you. Clarity in Action is proudly sponsored by My Cluck Hut. Yes, the soap company that is the one your mother should have warned you about. Now, don't let the name fool you. This eco-friendly soap company will get you clean without feeling dirty. But you know what? My Cluck Hut is about more than just getting clean. They have built and continue to grow a community that gives a cluck about the planet, about people, and about creating a reality where diversity and sustainability are not a pipe dream, but fundamental core values. So when you shop with My Cluck Hut, you're not just buying soap. You're choosing to be a part of something bigger than any one of us can be alone. So if you believe in shopping with purpose and from a brand that isn't afraid to speak truth to power, then go check them out, mycluckhut.com. The 2025 Tennessee Pride Chamber Allied Business of the Year. My Cluck Hut, it's more than a soap company. It's a clucking revolution.
Yeah, in our leadership classes, we do leadership programs, and we usually kick off with what we call leadership expectations. And one of the core tools in there is a thing we call 4 quadrants of leadership. And basically it breaks down how we work into 4 buckets. Like all good consultants, we love a good 4 square, right? So the left half of that 4 square is focused on business results. The right half of that 4 square is focused on people results. So on the business side, we have what we do and how we organize. And on the people side, we have who we are and how we relate. And one of the things that we encourage leaders to do is to use that as a barometer. Like, where do you naturally gravitate, right? If you're a disc D, you probably gravitate towards results. You're spending a lot of your time in the what we do category, right? If you're a disc S, you're probably thinking about the people and how we relate to one another. So we all have these natural predilections. What we encourage leaders to do is to think about that 4 square. We usually give them a little card that has it printed on there, and pick your container every day, every week, whatever. And think about how much time did you spend in each of those quadrants, right? Because what we've learned is that a lot of leaders will look back over that period of time and go, oh, geez, I haven't really interacted with anybody on my team on a personal level.
Yeah.
So before they go home that day or before they shut it down for the day, they will send out a few notes, Slacks, emails, texts, phone calls, whatever is their preferred method. But we also encourage them to choose the method and messaging that matters most to the receiver, not just the sender. You're not ticking a thing off your list here. You're attempting to make some human connections.
Exactly. Yeah. That kind of the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule, starting
Right.
to again, engage with them. And I really love this. And, in my personal life, I tend to be more people focused, but in my business life, because, as a coach, as, a facilitator, it's let's get the results. And I remember when I was a baby leader, I was so high D that people would always say, we don't feel she cares. And it broke my heart
Ah,
because I'm like, I do care, but
Mhm.
I was so focused on the results. And again, that moment of having somebody come to me and say, you need to soften it. You need to
yeah.
actually do that 3 minutes of Andrew. You got to show you care. It changed the game for me. And that's always really stuck with me. And again, really delivering it in their frame. I think that's great. Another thing I want to talk about is how this impacts retention, because we spend so much time and effort hiring people and then we lose great people. How can being more intentional, how can building this psychological safety, how can this really help with retention?
Well,
When-
Clara, people don't leave companies, they leave bosses and people,
Mhm.
right? It's it's boils down to the quality of the relationships that you have in place. If I am more invested in the people that I work with and that work around me, I'm more likely to stick around. I'm more likely to stick up for them. I'm more likely to look out for them and their safety. I
Mhm.
mean, we did a whole safety leadership program predicated on this idea that the more I care about you, the less safety incidents we'll have. And this was in an oil and gas company
Wow.
with a lot of bearded, steel toed boots, big burly dudes.
Mhm.
Um, and I had to go in there and tell them, hey, if you guys like each other more, you'll have less safety incidents. And turns out that was true.
Wild.
Right. So it really boils down to how much am I investing in the relationships with those around me? My boss, of course, because that's the primary reason people leave organizations, right? But it goes so much further beyond that.
Yeah.
I have to be making intentional investments in the relationships of the people around me. I mean, we believe that so strongly we wrote a book about it.
Mhm.
Good job. I love it.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
It's called You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One.
I love it. It's fantastic. So,
I
yeah.
I think that part of that trying to individualize the experience of the people that you work with. Again, speaking from a leader perspective of self-awareness, right? We always start there, understanding what are your normal tendencies and preferences and what lights you up, what inspires you, what's your purpose for being here, right? Start there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can have curiosity about the different people because they're going to have different styles, or maybe they're going to be very similar to you. So we got to kind of start layer by layer and kind of understanding. But I think once you can get to the having the curiosity to understand who this person is, you can ask the questions that help you get to what is their purpose for being in this role right now, right? Is it they're at a stage of their life where security is super important to them and they just need to keep that, keep that intact as they're getting kids through college or approaching retirement? Or you're working with a early career kind of person who wants to make a splash, wants to have some impact that they can feel great about, or maybe it's more around sustainability, or it could be any number of things. But I really do believe that in any role that you have at any stage of your career with any organization, if you can tie something that brings purpose to you, something that is like, okay, this feels fulfilling. And maybe it's because I have a best friend at work and we have a great time together and I enjoy being there because I have this relationship. Or the job that I get to do isn't maybe sexy, but I can connect the dots to understand that what I'm doing has ripple effects that touch millions of people in the world in a good way, right?
Mm.
Maybe I'm not doing the touching, but what I'm doing is enabling all of that. But you have to talk about those things. You have to understand where they're coming from and help them connect the dots in some ways, right? Or acknowledge those things.
For sure.
So that individualization and really understanding their purpose can, I think, really help in that retention and engagement space.
Yeah. And I think that also goes back to, again, when you were talking about how do I show up, I think also looking at who am I going to be interacting with before the interaction as much as you can so that
Sure.
you can prepare yourself for those conversations. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I could definitely keep this conversation going for weeks because I think you hit on so many things. And, especially I love both of you are saying kind of the same thing is that investing in your people, that's
Mhm.
the investment that we really want to do. So if somebody is looking at hitting the reset button, or they are looking at this and they say, yes, I can do a better job. Eric, let's go to you first. What was one thing, like where would you encourage somebody to start?
I mean, I would take stock of the relationships around me.
Hmm.
Like, what's the quality? How do people show up? How do you show up for the people that you rely on to get your work done? Right? We work in matrixed organizations. Very few jobs can you get to a high level of performance solo
Yeah.
on your own.
Mhm.
Right? You've got to work with other humans. So I would take inventory.
Yeah.
How good are the relationships around me, and what's my culpability there?
Yeah.
Right? What do I need to do? We lean on the people that we already know and like, but workflows change project to project.
Mhm.
Teams reorganize all the time. Take stock of the stakeholders that you have. Who are the most critical
Yeah.
to influencing the goals that you're going to be performance managed on?
Yeah.
Right? Who can help you and who can hinder you? And what is the quality of that relationship or those relationships? And what should you do? Actions can you take as an individual to improve those
Beautiful.
relationships?
I
That's where
love
I'd
that.
start.
Fantastic. Lori, what about you?
The word that comes to mind is just curiosity, right? That coming at things from a place of curiosity, we get in a grind. We get in habits. We get in status quo where this person's hard to work with, that person's my go-to. I have this troublesome situation with my boss, and that's just the way it is.
Mhm.
Right. And if we can press pause on that for a minute and be curious about what could be different about that. And I mean, it's aligned with what Eric has said, right? Part of it is assessing the relationship, but really getting into, but what can I do about
Mhm.
it? Right? Can I ask for feedback? Because I need to understand expectations better and that's going to solve it. Or can I take somebody to coffee and just have a purely social conversation with them to build some trust in a different way that didn't exist before? Right? Can I experiment in the lab of life through curiosity and just see if I can show up differently, make incremental changes that matter?
It's beautiful. Well, I just appreciate both of you, and these words have been so powerful. My whole focus is helping leaders, just as the two of you are, helping leaders build high performing but healthy cultures. And just what you're saying resonates so much. And I know that these words, again, will also have a ripple effect. And I know that they're going to connect with someone else out there. So I just want to say thank you both for being here. Eric, yes.
One more thing, Clara, because I'm going to say coming up here next week, the week of December 1st, the Corporate Bartender episode with Clara Capano will be released.
How nice. I love it. Beautiful. Yes. So again, you do have your podcast, The Corporate Bartender, where you dive into all of these things even more and have a really great kind of roundtable discussion. So definitely want people to follow that. So we're going to put the links to your book, to your LinkedIn profiles, to your podcast in the show notes. And I just encourage everyone to reach out and connect with you all. So thank you again for being here and just wishing you continued success.
Thank you, Clara.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Clara.
it.
I could just talk to the two of them all day long, and they just are hitting on so many of the things. I love the idea that, again, you have to model the behavior, you have to be intentional. They both resonated with the same core belief that I have, that if you really want to grow your bottom line, it all starts with your people. I love how Eric talked about doing an audit, get a sense of where you are and take ownership for that. What is my role in this? And then what is my role in improving this? And then having that genuine curiosity. Ask more questions, look for opportunities. Your people, they are your responsibility. And it doesn't matter how large your organization is because we all have a team. So let's make sure that with our customers, our clients, and especially our team, we are being very intentional and we are taking time to understand and to build those relationships because people thrive when they feel valued, welcomed, and part of something. So I hope that you learned a lot from this. I encourage you to share this just as with all the other episodes, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Clarity in Action.